a few general questions about growing up in Scotts Run. But
Okay.
first, for just a sound check, would you mind stating and then spelling your full name, please?
Okay. Sarah, S-A-R with an H. Middle initial is E. Boyd maiden name, Little, my married name. So Sarah E. Little, that's what I go by now. Okay. All right.
All right. And then if you want to just kind of tell us about growing up in Scotts Run, it being a mining community, and then just whatever you think is important.
Okay. The earliest I can remember, I was born in a little town near Fairmont, and then later years we moved to Osage, and then we lived here just a short period of time. I can't remember exactly how long we lived here, but I must have been around 3 years old, and then we moved to Purse Club, okay? And how come I remember moving from Osage to Purse Club? Because when we moved, I had a little doll baby that didn't have a head on it, and I wanted to take it with me, and my dad wouldn't let me take the headless baby. So I was telling my mother about this later years, and she said, Sarah, you was only about 3 years old, but you remember things that, you know, that meant a lot to you. And so from then on, we lived in Purse Club, okay? And my dad was a coal miner, and he worked right at Purse Club number 2. You know, all these little towns had numbers, and Purse Club number 2 was where we lived. And my dad worked there for 50 years in coal mines. And so it was beautiful growing up. We didn't know evil, hatred, and we did know a little bit of prejudice. But we were just a bunch of happy people. And we lived on a row, must have been about 30 houses. Well, in the coal mine, you had an idea. There were row houses, and all of them were built the same. You know, we had white neighbors, and so that's how I grew up. So we just grew up, and all of us was sort of in the same category. There's no rich among us, so everybody was kind of poor. So we just lived close together. We had white neighbors, and we just got along good. The only thing that separate schools, but as soon as school was over, we just played together, and we, you know, we shared. I remember if we had an apple, because things were not plenty like they are now. So we had an apple, or somebody wanted a bite, we just get a bite and just, you know, we didn't think nothing of it, you know. So our teacher told us about germs, and so we didn't know what germs was. So then later we said we wanted to buy, oh no, this is germs, you know, you got to watch for germs. But anyway, it was a good life, and we loved and respected everybody. We were taught that from little ones, and we went to church and to Sunday school. We were taught to love everybody and respect everybody, regardless of how people taught us, because we were called the N-word, you can imagine. And my mother taught us that you're not that, you're one of God's creations. So that's how I grew up, knowing who I was. And we went to grade school, a little school up on the hill up in Purse Club. Had good teachers that saw that we had to learn. They just didn't pass you on unless you learned. And of course, our family was a bunch of, we all sang. Mama sang, Dad sang, and we all did. So we was involved in a lot of little groups that sang and little plays and stuff like that when we grew up, you know. And then from there, high school, and we went to Monongalia High, which is an all-black school, and I love that. And then I was involved in a choir, and we went on trips. We got to go to the White House to sing for the president, and we went on a lot of trips in my teenage years. Let me see what else. And of course, we went to church, and often we had to go to church. It was just a must. When Sunday morning came, you just didn't question. You got up, you know, went to church. So Sunday was almost all day church, because we went to Sunday school, then we went to afternoon church, and the afternoon we spent reading the funny papers, because there was no bars and things open like it is now. So we just kind of lived a happy life. And then in the evening there was BYPU, which was for the youth, and of course we had to go to that. And it was a bunch of us. Let me see, there were 7 of us. Mom and Dad made 9. And all the company houses were 4 rooms. Of course, you had a porch, a back porch, and a front porch. And you didn't have a basement, it was just a cellar, just a dirt cellar. And so we spent a lot of time in the cellar. We played house, and we played mom and dad, which these kids know, you talk about that, they think, oh, that's silly. But to us, it was fun. And we played store, we played all those, kind of good games. And in the summertime, when it got warm, we spent a lot of time in the woods. We went to the woods. We got apples and things that grow up in the woods and nuts and things. And we did a lot of canning. My mom taught us how to can, and we did a lot of canning, like blackberries, and we made applesauce, and then we always had gardens. Everybody had gardens, and so like my dad, they would lease, because we didn't have a lot of property, because these were company houses. They was owned by the coal company, and so every year somebody would lease a plot of ground for those who wanted to have a garden. And of course my dad would lease about 5 acres, and so during the summer months we worked in the garden, and summertime we went to the garden, and we got a chance to can so many good vegetables. And we always had to share. When we went to the garden to get a head of cabbage or get tomatoes, mom and dad would say, go down, let's take Mrs. Smith some, or whoever else we'd take. Whatever we got from the garden, we learned to share. And so after high school, my sister and I went to Washington, D.C. We worked in the Pentagon building. And that's where I met my husband. And I got married and had 2 children, 2 girls. And I don't want to share this. Something bad happened to me before I got married, and I had a son. So you can imagine what that was like. So I don't like to talk about that. But I got married and had 2 children. And then later years, of course, that didn't work out too good. I lived in Washington, then I lived in Philadelphia. And from then, later years, I moved back home. Mm-hmm. And so I've been here ever since. Lost my mom and dad since I've been back. Other family members, there's only 2 of us now. Mm-hmm. So.
Can you tell us about how the area's changed since when you grew up here to when you live here now?
Well, this was, Osage was prosperous because this was a hub for all the coal miners, mm-hmm. all the coal mines from here all the way up to Cassville. It must have been, I don't know how many, but I know all these communities had their own coal mine and their own company stores, And Osage was the hub, and we had all kinds of stores. We had 2 department stores. We had an A&P, we had a meat market, 2 movie theaters, a cleaners, and a dentist here, just like you would any other booming coal mining town. We had all those places here. And of course, all the coal miners got paid on the 15th and the 30th of every month. So everybody got paid on those two days. And of course, everybody came to Osage. And so, oh my God, Osage was just crammed with people. My God, just people everywhere. And so it was just good because you got a chance to see everybody. And everybody was so glad to see everybody. I haven't seen you for so long. And it was just good. Everybody got along here. And of course, they had the clubs, I guess, the nightclubs or, the bars, whatever. And of course, that's where the men congregated, and of course we weren't allowed to go in a place like that. So it was really a booming community. And from there, Osage, then from there, Morgantown, Westover, Star City, and all those prosperous from the coal miners because that's where all the money really was. That's where all the money was, and so that's how they began to prosper because people, as they prospered, some of them moved away and then they moved to Morgantown, Star City, whatever. So money went where the coal miners went, and so that's how it was. So like I said, later years we moved to Osage, right up on this hill up here, and of course you wouldn't know it now because there was houses everywhere. And I know you probably got pictures of how it used to be, and one of the books over there got some of the pictures in it, and my whole family's in that book over there. I think I did show it to you, did I?
I think you did. Mm-hmm.
And so it was just it was just wonderful. And you know, people got along so well, because once in a while somebody would, you know, flare up, or somebody would get boozed up and something and start a fight. But most of the time, everybody got along real good. We didn't have any problem with color. You know, it was just a beautiful place to live. So I miss that, you know. So what else?
Could you talk about when you were growing up here, were you aware of kind of the danger of the mines, and did you hear a lot of stories?
Oh
the
yes,
danger?
about the explosions. You probably heard about that, haven't you?
Yeah.
Well, my dad missed all those explosions, and I kind of think it because we had a mom that believed in prayer. She prayed for my dad a lot, but it was so sad, and we got used to hearing the sound. Because whenever an explosion would happen, I don't know, there was always some kind of sound like a horn or something. And when you heard that, you just knew it was something bad, you know, going on. And there was one explosion at Purse Club number 2, that's where we lived. And there was this, one in Purse Club 15 over here. And that was my sister's husband was killed in that. And of course there was a big one here in Osage. I think there was, I can't remember exactly how many, but we was used to hearing that. We was very fearful growing up because you never knew exactly when it was going to happen, you know. So when the men went to work in the coal mines, you just kind of didn't know for sure if there was going to be some of those that made it out. So we was just blessed that our dad got out. He had some accident. He had a broken toe one time, something. But they said I know from what my dad used to tell them, they were awful hard. They have a lot of equipment for the coal miners now that they didn't have. They did what they call hand loading. And we used to go down and see my dad go to work. And it was like a little wooden car, and that's how the men got in there to go to work sometime. And it was maybe like 50 or 55 of these little block cars, and it was led by a big motor, and that was what pulled them into the mines. And of course, it was a beautiful sight to see because they had these little caps on that had a little light in it, and you'd see all these lights, you know, and you could tell your dad from anybody else, of course, when they came out. You didn't know your dad from anybody else because everybody was about the color of this, and so you just knew by the voice, you know, that was your dad. So. And then the company stores, everybody would congregate at the company stores, and so that's where we would usually go. And my dad would always save us something in his lunch pail, and that was just something special. My mom would get up early in the morning, make a lunch, and my dad always would leave something in his lunch pail for us kids. So when Daddy come home from work, we would just run to see him, so we'd get whatever it was. We didn't care what it was. Could have been a peanut butter sandwich or whatever. It was just good because Daddy brought that home for us, you know. And so that was happy times. And of course we didn't have bathtubs and things like we do now. Later when we moved to Osage we did, but when we lived in Purse Club we had the big tin tub. I don't know, you probably saw a picture of a great big tin tub, and my mom would have the water hot, you know, when my dad would come home from work, and she would, you know, make his bath for him. And we remember that, and of course they had these dirty clothes that he would, you know, work in. And later years, my dad got my mom a washing machine. Before that, we did hand wash. We had a washboard. I don't know if you ever seen a washboard, but we had to wash clothes on the washboard. Till later years, my dad bought us a washing machine. But when we had to wash those coal mining clothes and all that thick, you know, would be on have to wash them 2 or 3 times. But that was life. Everybody did it. So, you know, if we had clotheslines on the outside, there was nothing for you to see. A long clothesline from this house to the next, and you see all your beautiful white sheets and towels and pillowcases on the lines, because everybody had outside. We didn't have dryers then, so we washed and hang clothes outside. In the wintertime, sometimes they would freeze, but we put them outside no matter what. You just put your clothes outside. And they were beautiful because the sun would bleach your clothes, beautiful white clothes. And of course there was ironing days. I think everybody had a day to iron. You had a day to wash, you had a day to iron. And then you had a baking day. And that was Monday in our house. I don't know about the other families, but Monday was our baking day. And my mom would make enough bread to last until the next week, you know. And on baking day, it was always hot rolls, and that was the only time she made rolls. The rest of the time she made loaf, you know. But it was so good when on Monday she would make we'd have hot rolls, and what with that was baked beans. She would always make baked beans from scratch. I mean, we get it in the can now, but my mom made baked beans from scratch. And we'd come home from school and smell that bread. Oh my God, they were so good and good baked beans. That was Monday. And I think Wednesday was wash day, and then Thursday and Friday we did the ironing. We put up the ironing board and just iron all day, because we ironed everything. Sheets, pillowcases, towel, everything you just ironed. And of course you starched everything, all the shirts, my dad's shirts, and of course our school clothes, blouses or whatever was starched. So we had ironing day. Thursday was wash day. I think Friday was ironing day. And Saturday was just a good day. We got a chance to sleep late, you know. And then everybody cleaned their houses on Saturdays. You scrubbed and you waxed your floors, and you did your windows and put up clean curtains and scrub your porches. And of course we had the outside toilets, and we had to clean the toilet just like you did your house, and which was gross. But that's how we lived. That was just life. So everybody lived like that, and you know, so it was good. It was just beautiful. So okay, what else?
Well, the last question I have is, why is it important to you that this museum is here now, and that it's kind of trying to keep things
Well, it's
alive?
history, you know, and so like a lot of the younger people, they don't know the history of Scotts Run and how beautiful it used to be, the relationship that we had with one another. And pictures and things, or pictures tell a story. You know, I could tell you so much without it, but once you see a picture, it means so much more. And so that's why it needs to be published. And of course, a lot of people have moved away and lived in, and so they come back, and it's just wonderful to see pictures of, and you know, some of the coal miners that used to be coal miners, and of course they're elderly now, but they come back and pick out pictures of themselves, and it's just good. It's just so good. Like the picture of our family, I just treasure that. Matter of fact, I have a book like that at home, and we mailed it to a lot of our relatives that don't live here any longer, but got to see Mom and Dad and the rest of the family, because all of them, most all of them are passed on now, except two of us just left. And so 2 brothers went to the service. One was in the Air Force and one was in the Army. Yeah, the baby brother he was in the Air Force, and the older brother was in the Army. And so when they came back, the older brother lived in Cleveland, but the baby brother came back here, and the little church over there, he was a pastor. My baby brother was a pastor. And he died in 1980 with throat cancer. We lost him. So that's been my life.
Robert, if you, I don't know if you're
This is all you.
Yep. Okay. And well, I'd like to see what you have in your folder.
Okay, I
Yeah.
just kind of brought these. I didn't know I could have had brought a lot more, but I didn't. Now this was last year. This was my celebration, because I worked at Scotsman Settlement House for 35 years, and of course last year was my last year, so this is a picture of a celebration. Yeah. And this is years at Scotts Run. This where I was, like I said, I worked there for 35 years. This was a pantry. And this was lean years, you know, and we made an appeal for more food for the pantry. And this was like a story. Somebody was telling a story about me, and they made me like this lady here, Mrs. Pittman. And this is and they made it like a story. This is just something wrote about me. And of course, this was one of the programs at Scotts Run. I used to Jubilee, A New Beginning. This is me right here, and we had a service at Scotts Run. And this is last year. We had a singing, and I got more pictures that we sing a lot. And so this was Black History Month last year. This was a picture. So I've been kind of getting around in my life, and so yeah. All right.
Thank you so much for talking to us. This
Oh, you're
really
welcome. I hope
helpful.
I helped you. I hope
Absolutely.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I said something that really helped you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people will be really interested to hear kind of
Oh
your
yeah,
story.
it
So.
was such a beautiful